Good afternoon and welcome to Across the Arts. I'm your host, Patrick D. McCoy, and welcome to this very special installment of the Maestro series, celebrating great conductors of orchestra and choral ensembles. Today is no exception. We are joined today by Scott Tucker, who is the artistic director of the Choral Arts Society of Washington. We are going to chat about his career, his tenure here in Washington, and the big performance that's coming up at the Kennedy Center on Monday, May 23rd at 7 o'clock in the concert hall of Damian Jeter's An African American Requiem. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Scott because I don't want to take for granted that everyone knows all there is about every musician that I present. I want to put it in his own words. Scott says, "It is thrilling to conduct. I derive as much joy from it today as I did the day I stepped onto the podium. Music on the page is essentially lifeless, like a butterfly pinned to parchment. Performance is what breathes life into that beauty and allows it to take flight. While I love performing, it is what happens behind the scenes leading up to a performance that brings me delight. With a composer's intent and turning it into sound, it requires technique and hard work from each performer. Yet by the time the music reaches the audience, it has transcended that effort, connecting and transforming all involved, composer, performer, and listener alike." And I believe that's what's going to happen at the Kennedy Center on Monday night. Help me welcome Artistic Director of the Choral Arts Society of Washington, Scott Tucker. Good afternoon, Scott.
Hello, Patrick McCoy. How are you?
Oh my goodness, I'm doing well. And you know what, Scott, I want to thank you. This is just a little brief aside. You know, when we were in the pandemonium of COVID and no one knew what to do, you were one of my first lunch buddies that we ventured out and actually had lunch. So I want to thank you for that because I know that it's still going on, but there's a lot of anxiety around COVID. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it was great. That was great. And, I know that you are now not so close. You're a little farther away. So it was great to have lunch with you. And it always is. It's always a joy to talk with you, honestly.
Well, thank you so much. Well, since I led off with COVID, I want to start this question because, of course, I ask everybody who I have on this platform about COVID and how it's affected them. And right. You have really been brave as like others, in COVID in terms of choral arts and your programming. Talk to me a little bit. How did you all cope with COVID?
Oh, my gosh. It really, doesn't it seem almost decades ago that this all started? It's just been so long, but I think we like every organization that produces any sort of artistic product, we did our best to pivot immediately as best we could, and that just meant lots and lots of learning. We just learned about trying to present things exclusively online, artistic material, and trying not to be too cliche with it, but at the same time we had to be very it was just the learning curve was like whoop like that. And it was tough. I mean, I won't lie, it was hard. And I am fortunate enough to have this staff. Some conductors don't have that luxury, like they do everything. They, like my wife, she was not only for her church job, doing all the music, but she was also doing all the editing and everything. So I had some great support, but still it was time consuming. To do a 3-minute video of music takes hours of work. And so it turns out to be, just hugely time consuming. And, but, we did it, and we did it because we love the city and we love choral arts, and we wanted to, stay, and we just wanted to stay present as best we could. And we didn't know how long this would last.
And, I was fortunate to come to perhaps one of your first performances, live performances out in Alexandria, if I'm not mistaken, under the offices of Nita Helms and
Yeah,
classical movements and music in the garden, in the secret garden.
right.
And that was amazing to do that, you know, to hear live music and to see people actually singing up close and personal. It was just really wonderful. Now, you know, you and I have been on a journey together, I guess, for this last 10 or so years. And do you remember this? This is probably one of
Oh,
your first
sure.
interviews.
Yeah, that's my first interview in DC. Yeah, it's like
I don't
10
know if
years.
that came across on the screen because I have this
Yeah,
this blue screen behind me. But of course, if it didn't, that was Washington Life magazine. Of course, that was a feature that I did with Scott and had the opportunity to present that to him. Now, Scott, I want to just talk a little bit about you because I like I said, I don't want to take for granted that people know every artist that I present. So it's almost like an inward look into your life. So one of the interesting things that I learned about you a little later, I think was one of your first Christmases in Washington, was that you played the trumpet and you showed that trumpet. You showed us some tricks of that trumpet that night at Kennedy Center. So, and if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was like you were around 15 when you started.
I started as a trumpet player when I was 9.
Oh my goodness.
I started conducting when I was 15.
Oh, I knew a 15 was in there
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
Well, Lord, talk about the trumpet and how did you kind of segue from the trumpet to find this, this affinity with choral music?
Yeah, well, I started with that was my sort of first early career goal, I guess, was I wanted to be a trumpet player. And I was in the Boston area. And I played a lot of gigs. But and I went to the New England Conservatory of Music as a bachelor's for a bachelor's degree there in trumpet performance. And I did some playing, and I did some playing around all of Massachusetts and New England. But it became apparent to me as I got married, the first time I got married, and had a child on the way, that basically my career was waiting for the phone to ring, and I was getting kind of nervous about that. And I felt like, well, I could, maybe audition for a symphony somewhere and move, but didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to go really far away. So I had been conducting, as I said, since I'd been 15. And so I decided, and that was mostly theater that I was doing to start. So then I took the cast of one of the shows that I was doing, and I gave a little survey. I said, who would like to stay on and form a chorus? Because I'd love to, begin to do some choral work. And everybody signed up. And I had this instant chorus. And then I thought, now what? I didn't really know what to do. So I called my old high school choral director. And I said, listen, I've just formed a chorus, but I don't have any music, and I don't know what to program. So she was fantastic, and she sent me a bunch of music, and she got me started. So that's how that came about. And I just thought it would be fun to do a chorus at first, but honestly, after doing it for just a short time, I grew to love it. I had studied voice as well as trumpet at the New England Conservatory, and I thought I just was doing that so I could coach people. But then once I started conducting choral music, I realized, wow, trumpet music is a little bit limited, in terms of its repertoire compared to choral music, which goes centuries and centuries in either direction. So I thought I could work at this my whole life and never even touch the bottom of the barrel. And that really hooked me.
That's amazing, Scott. You've had such an amazing journey, and I want to talk about how your feet have landed in the nation's capital, the choral capital, they say, of the world, or what
Right.
have you. But I want to talk about this transition that you had to make, because you had a long career of conducting choral music in academia, and now you're in this, and not to say that you all did perform on concert stages, of course you did, but now you're in this climate where your home is always like the concert stage. Could you talk about maybe some of the I guess the ins and outs of conducting in the academia kind of setting as opposed to the concert performance setting?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of differences, and there's a lot of similarities too. I think in terms of the differences, in academia, if you're a professor, which is what I was, you're kind of, you're sort of this world. You're just in this your own little tower, and you just run everything. There's nobody that you necessarily need to bounce anything off of. Even you just do what you do. I had with the choral groups that I was doing there, always fantastic students who would help plan the tours and would help with all the logistics, and honestly, they were such bright, wonderful students at Cornell that they really did most of it, most of that logistical work. I just had to just sort of make sure it was happening, honestly, sometimes. And one of my great managers, I've had so many who have gone into arts administration and et cetera. One of them, Patrick, his name just absolutely escaping me, but and if he sees this, he'll be so devastated that I didn't know his last name. But he just got married to a woman named Erin Goers, but his name is not Goers. Anyway, he's now he's the I think artistic administrator of the Aspen Festival. So he's still so young. They get a lot of experience. They got a lot of experience there, and a lot of them have gone into that. But in terms of differences, coming here, I think working with a board and with a staff, that's something I had never done before, and that's just a big difference, in terms of how you do your work. Another difference, I'd say, comes with the singing forces, right? Both groups were both in Cornell and in here, essentially volunteer choruses. And at Cornell, I had these wonderful choruses. They were not music majors. They were not headed for careers in music, but they were avid choral singers, and they worked really hard to make really musical presentations. Here, it's very similar. These are volunteers, very bright, highly educated, incredibly talented, but not professional musicians. And so that is a big similarity. The difference is at Cornell, I had people usually for 3 or 4 years, and then they would move on. So I was always doing essentially the same lessons over and over and over again every 4 years. At Choral Arts, I've been able to build on things that we learned, at least up to COVID. And then and now I think we're kind of rebuilding, honestly, again.
That's amazing. So, one of the things I want to say or to bring out, I'm sure that you've had so many mountaintop musical experiences with choral arts, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, because every time I ask someone this question, it's like a difficult question.
It is.
But I mean, because you've had so many, you've performed so many different masterworks. You performed, certainly your partnerships with the National Symphony Orchestra and so forth. But what would you say, what are your big moments that you will currently treasure or will treasure as far as the mountaintop experience with choral arts?
Yeah. You're right. This is such a hard question. I do. There's so many things that I do value. The first time I worked with Eschenbach with the NSO, I respect him greatly. He's sort of a musician's musician in a lot of ways. And the first thing we did together was the Missa Solemnis in 2012 or 13. And I just remember we sat together with the score, and he kind of just sang it to me the way he wanted it. Kind of sang. I mean, it was sort of singish what he was doing. But I was taking notes, and sometimes I just had to kind of guess what it was he was trying to get at. So he didn't really articulate it necessarily. He would just kind of sing these things, and I would take notes. That was an interesting experience. But doing the Missa Solemnis with him, doing Beethoven with Eschenbach is an incredible experience, because he's so fully internalized the music that honestly, I feel like, though I'd studied Missa Solemnis many times, I didn't really understand it until I did it with him. And then when we did the, the final movement, suddenly I'm like, oh, now I get it. And that was, for me, that was just a great, just a great moment. But, conducting with Renee Fleming standing there next to me, that
I
was
was there for that
amazing.
concert with
Oh my
Norm
God.
Lewis.
And Norm Lewis, yeah, that was incredible. I think, some of the things that I've gotten to conduct that I wouldn't have been able to do at Cornell were, so exciting for me. The Berlioz Requiem, for instance, when does one ever get to do that? And it's a piece I just adore. And doing Britain War Requiem with our current maestro certainly has been huge. That was a huge pinnacle for me, because that's a piece I've always wanted to do. I wrote my undergraduate thesis on that piece.
Oh, wow.
And as I've never been able to do it, so it was the first time I'd ever been able to do it. And so that was really exciting too. And anyway, but I was going to say that the things I really treasure the most happen in rehearsal. It's that moment when the eyes light up in the singers, and they hear it, something just right for the first time, and they have this aha. That to me is like a drug. I just get hooked on that feeling of seeing them just get it.
It's amazing. So this leads me to my next question. When I spoke about the mountaintop experience, certainly this performance that you all have coming up on Monday of an African American Requiem by Damian Jeter. And Damian is from this neck of the woods. He's from Chesterfield County, 1998 yep. Graduate of Matoka High School. And so certainly we're proud of him as a native Virginian. But now he's going to have this kind of this homecoming kind of moment that he's going to experience with this work being enjoying its East Coast premiere at the Kennedy Center. Talk to me a little bit about that. How did this collaboration come about, and perhaps the forces that are involved in this performance coming up on Monday?
Yeah, so quite a long time ago now. I think it was 2018 or maybe early 2019 or so. I got a message from my very good friend in Portland, Kathy Fitzgibbon, who's a choral director. And Kathy had subbed for me at Cornell one time when I was on sabbatical. And she's a good friend. I really admire her a lot. Anyway, she sent me a message. She said, we have commissioned this piece and I have it in my hand and it's really great. You might be interested. So I said, great, introduce me to the composer and, we'll see. So I met Damian that way, and then he sent me the score. And as soon as I saw what it was, I thought, how has this not ever been written before? And a Requiem Mass, which often is used for a social statement, dedicated to victims of racial violence. I mean, how could that not have already been written? And I just thought, well, that is a brilliant idea. And then I cracked open the score and I started to look at it and study it. And I thought, well, this is really brilliant. It's just so well written, and taking elements of all sorts of elements of African American music and texts, and mixing them with the ancient liturgy of the Requiem Mass, and not only that, but nods to Verdi and others in there as well. So it's this fantastic combination of styles, but really skillfully done. It never feels contrived or forced into something. It just is a beautifully, organically created piece. So I just thought, well, we have to do this piece. And so I went to Tad, our executive director, right away, and I said, look, this is a keeper. We have to do this. And he was, as Tad is, when I come into the office with that attitude, he's always like, okay, let's make it happen. And so, then I did think to myself almost immediately, and this is a while ago still, how do we do this with, what will it look like if just like all white people up on the stage are doing this piece? It might be a little bit much. So I called Nolan Williams and I said, Nolan, I know that you've contracted an orchestra, almost all of Black musicians, certainly mostly all of color, before. Do you think that you could do it for this project? And as a sweetener, but not just as a sweetener, because I really admire him so much. Please, come to the podium and let's open the concert with some of your work. So so he agreed. So he contracted the orchestra from all up and down the East Coast, including DC, lots of players from DC, but also others from Philadelphia and New York. And we have this wonderful orchestra, and a lot of Nolan's singers are also singing with us. So we have a group up there that's not just all like me, which is, I think, a really great statement. And this was all planned, not that it's that important, but it was all planned before George Floyd. This piece was written before George Floyd. This was all supposed to happen. This was going to be premiered before that even happened. And but now that a majority of Americans have woken up to everything that's been happening, all the terrible violence, the killing of Black men, largely by police, it couldn't be more timely or more apt. So this is our way, at least as the mostly white chorus, of saying, we stand with the victims of racial violence. We stand for, love and not hate. And then to do this great collaboration with Nolan's chorus, with Nolan's orchestra, with Kathy Fitzgibbon is bringing some singers over from Portland to join us. And so this is, and the four soloists who we can talk about, who are all wonderful. It's just a tremendous collaboration and a statement of community, I guess you'd say.
Beautiful. And you mentioned the orchestra, and you probably remember, I would say a couple of years ago, you and I,
yes.
we were at a concert that Nolan produced at the Great Hall at 19th Street Baptist Church, or 16th Street, I might add.
Yeah.
But that orchestra, as you just you punctuate, oh my God, it's phenomenal. So,
yeah.
If anything, the orchestra, to see that orchestra, predominantly of artists of color at the Kennedy Center, that is something to definitely be remarked and amplified, because it's just beautiful. And thank you, Scott. I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity to have this work lifted up, and I think that's important. It wasn't like an afterthought. This came before George Floyd. That's amazing in itself. So thank you for sharing that. Now, as it relates to this work, and this is not necessarily a planned talking point, but I feel like it naturally leads to this, with all these conversations of equity and equality and class community, do you think these kinds of works will continue to be welcomed, or is it just something, and I'm not just correlates, I mean, just across the board, is it going to be something that's going to be continued to be welcomed, or maybe just something that's seasonal because of the occasion?
I think, I'm optimistic that now the repertoire has been cracked open.
Mm-hmm.
I am optimistic about that. I mean, I do know that, right after George Floyd, everybody was like, every white and person of color is like, Black Lives Matter, right? Everybody was all about it. And of course, human nature, that all kind of will fade. It fades a lot, and that's sad, but true. But I do believe that, even in talking with Nigel Boone at the National Symphony, who's the artistic, planner, after the George Floyd murder, everybody was like, wow, our repertoire is really, 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 really white and conservative, and quite, just overly conservative. And that's been true for a long time because of money. People come to see the Verdi Requiem, and they come to see, things that they're familiar with. Mm-hmm. And so it's a circle that gets perpetuated, as you well know. And so it's hard as an organization who's putting money down to, you know, to produce these things, to say, okay, I'm going to take a chance on something that no one's ever heard of, and hope that they come. There's enough of them come that, you know, that we don't, you know, fold because we've presented this piece. It's scary, but I think, like I said, I think the repertoire has been cracked open. And even talking to someone like Nigel Boone, you know, who 5 years ago we might not have had an extended conversation about William Grant Still, or Nathaniel Dett, or Florence Price, or any of those great composers of concert music of the past, right? Who are African American or people of color. And so he, you know, after George Floyd, we've had many conversations about, you know, just, you know, George Walker. I mean, so many great composers that have been neglected, and I know he is someone who's really on board with making sure that programming keeps going. And I think that he's not alone. I think I see it sort of everywhere, and I don't think it's going to fade too much, because honestly, once people hear this music, this whole window of great music, that's all that has to happen, because you know, you hear almost anything by Florence Price or Nathaniel Dett or whoever, and you're like, that is great music. I want to hear that again, you know, and it will build on itself. I'm optimistic, and I really hope so.
Well, Scott, I just want to pause here and say thank you so much for always being so transparent and just really to go there with me. I know sometimes people are hesitant to have these kind of conversations, but I really appreciate you in this moment, and I want to let you know that. So thank you so much for being so open.
You do. Thank you.
I want to take a moment and play a little excerpt. I won't give it all the way because I know that we want the people to come on Monday night to hear the performance of an African American record, but I do want to take a moment to share this excerpt of the Agnus Dei. Let me make sure I go to the right thing before I share my screen. You know, I always feel like when you do these Zooms, you almost have to have a rehearsal. Let's see here. Just give me one more. You all will bear with me. And then shortly also, I am going to see if we have any comments or questions, because I know the people are probably just buzzing about this interview on the Maestro series with Scott Tucker. So just bear with me one second. I think we're good to go here. Yes, we are. So let me make sure I share the sound. That could be a disaster if you don't, but here we go. All right. So I don't want to give it all away. So that's just the excerpt of the Agnus Dei performed by the Resonance Ensemble, conducted by Dr. Catherine Fitzgibbon, who I've had the pleasure of interviewing her also. So that was a treat to hear the group. So I want to kind of move ahead. We're going to come back to an African American Requiem, but I want to go ahead and ask some more probing questions in case there's some aspiring conductors or current conductors who need a little recharge. I just want to ask you, what is something that you wish would have been made available to you when you were developing as a conductor, as far as professional training or anything of the like?
Yeah, good question. I mean, of course, it was a long time ago now that I was starting, so there were no computers. There was, so so I learned a lot of when I started. I had a book, and I learned from a book by Max Rudolph. But I'd say that so there are a lot of resources, which is great, and people should take advantage of them. I think, conducting is lots of things. It's communication, it's inspiration, it's celebration, but probably more than anything, it's imagination. I think that the thing that is maybe most important for any conductor is to have that sense, that the bravery and the sense to imagine a program, but also imagine the music itself exactly how you want it to sound, and to know why. And so any resource that gets to the heart of that is what I would have liked. And I had a lot of great resources. I have to say that, at New England Conservatory, even though I was a trumpet major, I had a theory teacher named Lyle Davidson. Is this amazing man. He also taught at Harvard. He was very cerebral, and he didn't have us like zip through sight singing books. No. He would play an interval, and then he would say, "Okay, now I want you to internalize it." He almost hypnotized us. But internalizing a score is one of the greatest skills that you can have as a conductor. And so that means not taking a score and listen to a recording and figuring out how it goes that way, but to really be able to look and imagine, really specifically imagine what that whole thing should sound like. And that takes a lot of practice, but it takes a guide as well, someone to really help you learn how to do that. So I wish I had resources. Lyle Davidson was terrific, but he wasn't thinking necessarily about score study. And not being a great pianist, and my chorus will tell you that I'm in fact a terrible pianist, but that skill, that sort of thing, that's what I would recommend to a young conductor to spend their time doing.
So in terms of if you had a young person to say, "Hey, Maestro Tucker, I want to be a conductor," what would you say, given all of the different experiences that you've had as a conductor in the career? And I know it didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of people who want to, and they're coming from different places. There's people, like I've had people at Cornell like that. There's people who are very, very confident, but without a lot to back it up. I'm just in the middle of an interview.
Is this going to be awkward?
Well, I don't know. You want to see Julie?
Yes, Julie.
She's coming in with her bicycle.
Hey, Julie.
It's so good to see you, Patrick.
Yes, you all who don't know, this is
Julie.
Julie.
With my music score, like you did, never write without your,
oh my goodness.
Never write without your Forêt Cantique.
Cantique de Journée Scene. I love that piece. Everybody, this is Julie Tucker. Oh my goodness, just a sweetheart. And Scott kind of alluded about her and her church work earlier, but she's a fantastic organist, and she's a radio host these days at WETA doing her thing. Congratulations, mother. They have a beautiful daughter. They are just, oh my goodness. You know what? You're gonna make me get to my questions sooner than I wanted to, because we're gonna miss them here in the DMV. Oh my goodness, Julie, good to see you, and thank you for giving us this cameo.
Super good to see you, Patrick.
Thank you so much. That was a treat. Thank you so much. So Scott, I guess like that will bring me to my next question. Of course, I see all of your packing boxes in the background and so forth. And
no, we are not leaving. I just want to be clear.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
We're staying in the area. Those boxes belong to Julie's dad, who is selling his house, and he has a house in Maryland. and he's moving back to Taiwan in a little while. So he's as we speak upstairs in the attic building shelves so that we can put those boxes there.
Well, amazing.
For
so you all heard it first here. They're not going anywhere. So let's just we'll start with that. But to go on further, so Scott, you've had this, oh my goodness, as I started earlier, you've had this storied career, this journey with choral arts. And I remember the first time that I formally met you was when the late Norman Scribner, the founder of the Choral Arts Society of Washington, passed you the baton at Washington National Cathedral. That was it was a celebration for him, but at the end, you were introduced as the music director and he passed his baton to you. That was such a wonderful thing. And then of course, your last concert of the season will kind of end your journey the way it began at Washington National Cathedral. So I don't mean to get you all misty-eyed over there, but just talk to me a little bit about, what's next. I know you're leaving choral arts, but I know that your heart is always going to be with them, because that's a long time to be with any organization that you invested so much love and care with choral arts. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it's every place I've been, I've thought I could stay here forever, and I could have, I could have stayed forever at Milton Academy, where I taught for a little while, and at Cornell for sure. And I think with any organization, sometimes it's just time to, as you say, pass the baton. And allow the organization to grow in its own way, with various leaderships, and so that's what's happening with me. As in terms of what's next, I'm really not sure yet. I have a little time to decide. I'm going to take probably a lot of next year to after I sort of decompress this summer. I'm going to take some time next year and really work out what's next for me. I think I would like to teach again, because that's a nice way to round out, your sunset years, and just pass on the things that I know or have learned. And I think the next generation, I think every generation of conductors has been better, as we go, and because I think us older people tend to want to pass on what we know. So I think the profession is growing. Choral music in the United States has really grown in this last 30 years tremendously, with just amazing ensembles. And I think more and more professional ensembles are going to crop up and be, amazing, because programs like Indiana and Yale are pumping out these just spectacular musicians. And so that's naturally going to create communities of great music. But anyway, in terms of what I do next, I'm not sure, but I would like to teach again. I'm not sure where. I definitely want to stay in this area. We just bought this house a year ago and love it out here in near Wolf Trap. And so we don't have any plans to go anywhere.
Well, that's amazing. But we're certainly still going to miss you of choral arts. But that leads me to another point, because you had mentioned about passing I mentioned it, you kind of carried it forward about passing the baton. What are your hopes for, I guess, your successor with choral arts? What would you like to see in terms of a leader? I know you valued the individuality, but in terms of what were some of the things that you would like to see in your successor?
Well, it's a dangerous question, because what I really want to see is someone who's got strong musical and organizational conviction, who can bring this group forward. Of course, there are certain things that I hope the trajectory continues. Every conductor has a different style, so it doesn't matter to me at all, kind of stylistically what they're like. But I think to bring the most musically out of this group, they have to continue to use their each individual singer needs to use their ears to its full potential. And so I hope that whoever continues with them continues that emphasis. But also, I mean, you know, doing this African-American Requiem, you know, you know, Norman left us behind with this great annual concert of celebrating Martin Luther King, but we really were talking as an organization, actually for the past, you know, 4 or 5 years, that that's not enough. And so I would love to see a repertoire really expand, you know, as we talked about, beyond just the dead white guys. And I hope that whoever it is can be a great educational leader, you know, somebody who can energize an educational mission in choral arts and bring that into fruition.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you so much for joining me. But before you go, I want to take a moment to check in and see who was all checking in with us on this interview, because I'm sure they are here and they are watching both on Facebook and YouTube. And so I'm just going to check that really quickly. But as I get myself together to do that, I just again want to thank you. So I see that Jason Max Ferdinand is on here. We have Karen Hall, Jerome Brooks. Oh, Ted Carrick is on here. Seeing some familiar faces. I'm sure there's some more over on the YouTube side. But just to recap very quickly, this work we're talking about, an African-American Requiem by Damien Jeter. It's going to be performed as the East Coast premiere on Monday, May 23rd. At 7:00 p.m. in the Kennedy Center Concert Hall. It's going to be I'm sure, a powerful presentation, and certainly timely. Just to talk a little bit about the soloists, of course, the soloists are Jacqueline Eccles, Carmisha Peak, Norman Schenkel, and Kenneth Overton, with the Choral Arts and Symphonic Chorus, the Residence Ensemble with Catherine Fitzgibbon, and also, as Scott mentioned, the opening work conducted by Nolan Williams and the New Works Philharmonic Orchestra with the New Works Voices of America. So this is going to be a powerful evening of music, and I'm just certainly excited. Scott, again, thank you for just so, you know, I would just say leading the way with this presentation, and as you kind of echoed in your sentiments, this is certainly a step in expanding, you know, the repertoire to more persons of color, and just bringing that, you know, to the platform stage of the concert hall. So thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you. You know, I just admire you greatly. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on Monday. So again, this has been Across the Arts, the Maestro series with Artistic Director of the Choral Arts Society of Washington, Scott Tucker, again, speaking ahead of an African-American Requiem by Damien Jeter to perform on Monday at the Kennedy Center Concert Hall. If you all don't have anything to do, if you do have something to do, you want to make sure that you go to choralarts.org and get your tickets, or either to the Kennedy Center website. This is going to be a just mind-changing experience with this work. So again, thank you so much, Scott. And again, I am Patrick D. McCoy. You have been watching and listening to Across the Arts. And until we meet again, have a great day. Thank you all so much. Scott, just hold on for a